This is Mr. Kennedy, and today we are discussing a phenomenon that is quietly reshaping the dating market in ways that nobody in the mainstream conversation wants to examine with honesty. We are talking about men over 50 who are simply done auditioning for relationships. Men who are done proving themselves, done performing, and done jumping through hoops to earn consideration from women whose requirements have become impossible to satisfy, and whose selection criteria have become fundamentally disconnected from anything resembling a rational exchange. These men aren't choosing the solo path because they failed at relationships. They are choosing it because they have succeeded. Succeeded in building real lives, real careers, real self-sufficiency, and real clarity about what they are and aren't willing to accept. They are choosing the solo path because they have succeeded in recognizing that the audition process itself has become absurd, exhausting, and fundamentally not worth the role being offered at the end of it. There comes a point in every man's life. For many of us, it arrives somewhere around 50, though for some it comes earlier, and for others it takes a little longer, where you sit down with the full accounting of what the modern dating market is asking of you, compare it honestly against what the modern dating market is offering in return, and reach a conclusion that is simple, clear, and irreversible. The math doesn't work. The role isn't worth the audition, and you are done. You spent decades proving your worth, demonstrating your value, performing masculinity in the specific configurations that earned female approval at each stage of your life. You built the career. You accumulated the assets. You developed the emotional intelligence that previous generations of men were never required to possess. You learned to communicate, to be present, to manage conflict with maturity, to be the stable center that a functional partnership requires. And now, standing at 50 with all of that built and proven, you are being asked to begin the audition again, to demonstrate your value again, to perform your worthiness again, for an audience that holds all the selection power and offers diminishing returns on the investment. And you are exhausted. Not because you can't meet the requirements, but because the requirements keep expanding, the audition never ends, and the relationship you supposedly win at the end of it isn't worth the performance it took to get there. If you are here expecting me to tell men to step up their game, go to therapy, optimize their profiles, or improve themselves to meet modern relationship standards, you're in the wrong place. We don't deal in socially acceptable lies on this channel. This is about understanding why capable, successful, high-value men are choosing to exit the dating market entirely, and why that exit is not a retreat. It is the most rational calculation a man with full information can make. Stay with me. This goes deeper than you think. Let's start by understanding precisely what I mean by auditioning, because the distinction matters and the language is important. Dating has always involved some degree of performance, presenting your best self, demonstrating your value, showing that you are a viable partner with something real to offer. That is normal courtship behavior. It is bilateral. It has existed across cultures and across time. There is nothing inherently wrong with it. But modern dating, particularly for men over 50, has transformed from courtship into an audition, and the difference between those two things is everything. In courtship, both parties are evaluating mutual compatibility. Both are presenting themselves. Both are demonstrating value. Both are deciding in real time and with genuine agency whether the other person meets their standards and serves their actual needs. It is a bilateral evaluation process that leads, ideally, to a mutual selection where both people have chosen and both people have been chosen. In an audition, one party performs and the other evaluates. You demonstrate that you meet her requirements. She determines whether you are adequate. The power dynamic is completely and structurally one-sided. You are the applicant. She is the casting director. You are trying to earn the role. She is deciding whether to cast you. And critically, you have no equivalent evaluation power in this dynamic. You are not assessing whether she meets your standards with equal weight. You are performing for her assessment. That shift from mutual courtship to one-sided audition is what men over 50 are recognizing and rejecting, and they are right to reject it. So what does the modern audition actually require? What are men over 50 expected to perform to earn consideration in the current dating market? Let's go through it with full precision, because naming these requirements clearly is the first step toward understanding why rational men are declining to perform them. The first requirement is the financial demonstration. You need to demonstrate financial stability and success, and not merely that you can support yourself. That is the baseline, the floor, the minimum that generates no credit whatsoever. You need to demonstrate that you can elevate her lifestyle, that your income and assets are sufficient to provide the experiences, the security, the quality of life, and the social status she has decided she deserves. For men over 50 who have spent decades building their financial position, this is particularly galling. You have built real financial stability through genuine effort over many years, and what the modern dating market does with that stability is immediately convert it into a target. She isn't evaluating whether you are financially responsible or whether you manage resources well. She is evaluating whether your finances are useful to her specific vision of the life she wants to live. The second requirement is physical presentation. You are expected to maintain fitness and appearance standards that have become increasingly demanding for men while simultaneously becoming optional for women. You need to demonstrate that you are aging well, that you are disciplined about your health, that you present as a man who takes care of himself. The double standard here is not subtle. A man who is carrying extra weight, who has let his fitness decline, who is not actively working to maintain his physical presentation, he is penalized significantly in the dating market. A woman in equivalent physical condition is expected to be accepted unconditionally and celebrated for her confidence. You are being evaluated against a standard she is not required to meet. This asymmetry is structural. It is acknowledged nowhere in the mainstream conversation, and it is a significant component of why capable men are deciding the audition isn't worth entering. The third requirement is emotional labor competence. This is the addition to male requirements that previous generations were never asked to perform, and it may be the most exhausting component of the modern audition. You are expected to be a therapist, an emotional manager, a constant validator, and a psychological safe harbor. You need to be vulnerable, but not so vulnerable that you appear weak or unstable. You need to be emotionally open, but not so open that your emotional needs become a burden on her. You need to be capable of processing her feelings with patience and skill, but never burdening her with your own in ways that exceed her tolerance. You must be the stoic rock when she needs stability, and the emotionally available communicator when she needs connection, simultaneously, on demand, without advance notice. The fourth requirement is domestic competence and labor contribution. Because modern women work, and that is a reality without judgment, you are expected to split domestic labor equally, regardless of income disparity, regardless of hours worked, regardless of any contextual factor that might logically affect the allocation. If you earn substantially more and work substantially longer hours, that is irrelevant to the domestic labor calculation. If you hire help or pay for services that handle domestic tasks efficiently, that is often considered inadequate because it fails to demonstrate that you personally are willing to do the labor. The domestic contribution is not evaluated on outcomes, it is evaluated on performance. The fifth requirement is social and ideological alignment. You need an impressive lifestyle, cultural sophistication, the correct political orientation, and increasingly, you need to demonstrate acceptance of an ideological framework that positions men as default perpetrators of social harm and women as default victims, requiring protection and accommodation. Expressing disagreement with this framework, even thoughtfully and with evidence, is frequently sufficient grounds for disqualification. You are not being evaluated as an individual with a coherent worldview. You are being evaluated for compliance with a narrative. Now, here is what makes this set of requirements particularly exhausting, and what distinguishes it from the reasonable performance expectations of normal courtship. These requirements are not static. You do not meet them once, demonstrate your adequacy, and move forward. They are ongoing performance expectations that must be maintained continuously throughout the audition process, which is itself indefinite, and, if you are selected, throughout the entire relationship with no terminal point. The audition never ends. The evaluation is permanent. You are always performing, always being assessed, always at risk of being found inadequate against a standard that expands in response to being met. And for men over 50 who have spent decades performing, who have genuinely built careers and raised children and developed real emotional intelligence and accumulated real assets, this permanent audition is not just exhausting, it is insulting. You look at what is being demanded, and you reach a conclusion that is simple and clear. Why am I still auditioning? I have already proven myself, repeatedly, across decades, under real conditions. Why do I need to perform my worthiness again, from the beginning, to earn consideration from someone who has not demonstrated equivalent value and is not subject to equivalent evaluation? And this brings us to the part of the modern audition that is most fundamentally broken. It is completely, structurally asymmetrical. You are being evaluated on income, fitness, emotional competence, domestic contribution, and ideological alignment. What is she being evaluated on in return? What standards is she required to meet to earn your genuine consideration? What does she need to demonstrate to justify the investment she is asking you to make? In the honest version of that accounting, not the culturally polished version, the honest one, the answer is close to nothing, because modern dating culture has made a structural decision to position women as the selectors and men as the applicants. She holds the auditions. You perform for her consideration. The evaluation is one-directional by design. She can be significantly out of shape while requiring you to maintain fitness standards. She can earn a modest income while requiring you to earn substantially more and contribute that income to her lifestyle. She can be emotionally volatile and inconsistent while requiring you to be an emotional rock of stability. She can bring significant personal baggage from previous relationships while holding you to standards of emotional availability that assume a clean slate. The requirements flow in exactly one direction. But let's follow the logic all the way through. Let's say you decide to play the game anyway. Let's say you invest the time and energy and perform the audition competently. You meet the requirements, you're selected, you win the role. What exactly did you win? Is the role being offered actually worth the performance it took to earn it? Think about this the way an experienced professional thinks about a job offer. The compensation package matters. The role requirements matter. The institutional culture matters. The risk profile of the position matters. A sophisticated person does not accept a role simply because they were offered it. They evaluate whether the role is worth accepting. What is the modern relationship offering men over 50? Companionship, conditionally, and contingent on your ongoing performance meeting her ongoing standards. The companionship is not guaranteed. It can be withdrawn at any time, without notice, in response to any failure to meet expectations that may or may not have been clearly communicated. It is companionship on a lease with no security of tenure. Intimacy, increasingly unlikely as relationships age, and even when it exists, it is frequently conditional on your performance across every other domain. It becomes a reward mechanism rather than a mutual expression of desire. It is available when you have adequately met her needs, and unavailable when you have not, regardless of your needs. Partnership, theoretically offered, practically structured as a service arrangement in which you contribute across financial, emotional, and domestic dimensions while she evaluates the adequacy of your contribution. It is not a partnership of equals building something together. It is a performance review with ongoing consequences. And for all of this, you are accepting legal and financial risk that is structurally asymmetric. You are risking asset division in a divorce system that treats years of unequal financial contribution as equivalent contribution. You are risking being on the wrong side of a family court system that has structural biases documented in outcome data. You are accepting a contract that she can exit unilaterally at any time, for any reason, with the full protection of a legal framework that was designed without your interests as a primary consideration. That is the role. That is what the audition is for. And capable men over 50 are looking at that script and making a clear, rational decision. No thank you. The compensation doesn't justify the performance requirements. The risk profile is unacceptable. The role isn't worth playing. There is a biological dimension to this clarity that the mainstream conversation refuses to discuss with honesty. When you reach 50, your testosterone levels have declined significantly from their peak. Society presents this as a problem to be managed, a deficit to be corrected with medical intervention. But men who have made the choice we're examining today describe something different. They describe the hormonal shift not as a loss, but as a liberation. When you were 25, your biology was running a program that had nothing to do with your rational self-interest. Testosterone at those levels hijacked your decision-making in ways you could feel but couldn't fully override. You would encounter an attractive woman, and your neurochemistry would begin constructing rationalizations for pursuing her, regardless of the actual cost-benefit analysis. You tolerated behavior that you knew, on some level, you shouldn't tolerate. You ignored signals that your clearer self would have read accurately. You made decisions that served the biological imperative at the expense of your own well-being, your own peace, and your own resources. That override diminishes after 50. The biological pressure weakens, and the clarity that replaces it is remarkable. You can evaluate a situation accurately without your chemistry distorting the output. You can recognize entitlement, manipulation, poor character, and structural asymmetry without your hormones arguing for an exception. You can make decisions that actually serve your interests rather than the interests of a reproductive program that has been running your decision-making since adolescence. This biological clarity is, in the social context, genuinely threatening because a man who is making decisions about relationships based on logic rather than chemistry is a man who keeps reaching the same conclusion. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. The role isn't worth the audition. The peace of the solo life is worth more than the conditional companionship of the partnered life at current terms. So what do you actually find on the other side of that decision? What does the solo life deliver that the audition was promising to deliver and never quite did? You find peace, not the absence of something, the presence of something. You wake up in the morning and the house is quiet, with a quality of quiet that is entirely different from the tense silence of unspoken resentment or the fragile calm before an emotional storm. It is genuine, restorative quiet. Your morning, your coffee, your schedule, your thoughts, none of them require management or performance before you have even fully woken up. Your money is yours, the full expression of the financial autonomy you spent decades building. You are not funding a lifestyle that someone else designed and you partially inhabit. You are not justifying expenditures to someone whose priorities differ from yours. The resources you built through your own effort are allocated according to your own values and your own judgment. Your time is yours. The weekends that were previously consumed by social obligations to her network, by activities you participated in as a performance of partnership, by the logistics of coordinating two people's schedules, those weekends belong to you. The evenings that were spent managing emotional weather belong to you. The mental bandwidth that was occupied by the constant background process of relationship management is available for other things. You stop walking on eggshells. You stop the perpetual low-grade alertness to someone else's emotional state, the anticipatory management of potential conflicts, the careful navigation of a landscape that shifts without notice. You realize, often with genuine shock, how much cognitive and emotional energy that vigilance was consuming, and when it stops, the relief is physical. Society will tell you this is selfishness. It will frame your contentment as a symptom of damage or avoidance. Men who are still in the audition will look at your peace and tell you that you need to find someone, that you are missing out, that the loneliness will catch up with you, and they will say this directly after their wives have corrected them publicly at a dinner party without consequence. Your contentment threatens something in them, because if you are genuinely happy in the solo life, if the peace you found is real and sustainable, then the compromises they are making look different, and they need those compromises to look necessary. They need the audition to be the only game worth playing. Your exit challenges that. You have already proven yourself. You have built your life through genuine effort under real conditions. You have paid your dues to a system that has kept changing the terms without notice. You do not need to audition again. You do not need female approval to have value. You do not need a partner to confirm that what you've built was worth building. If this landed, if you have recognized the audition for what it is and are calculating whether the role is worth performing, drop a comment. Tell me where you are in this. The conversation between men who are seeing the board clearly is how this analysis reaches the men who need it most. Subscribe to the channel. Every week, we run the numbers that nobody else is willing to run. Without the romantic filter, without the socially acceptable softening, without the lies that keep capable men performing in auditions for roles that were never worth winning. You don't need permission to be done. You don't need anyone's approval to choose your own peace. Stay healthy.